Sega Game Gear Micro. In 2020, Sega celebrated its 60th anniversary in one of the strangest ways imaginable, by releasing the Sega Game Gear Micro. It wasn't just a smaller version of their 1990 handheld, it was tiny. Measuring just 3.15 inches wide with a 1.15-inch screen, it was so small that many players joked you needed a magnifying glass to see what was happening, and Sega actually sold one as a bundle bonus. Instead of one system with a full library, Sega released 4 different color variants, each preloaded with a unique set of 4 games. That meant to own the full 16-game selection, you'd have to buy all 4 units. The controls were functional but cramped, making long play sessions almost impossible for anyone with adult-sized hands. While it ran the games faithfully, the micro scale turned into more of a novelty collector's item than a practical gaming device. It was never intended to replace the original Game Gear. It was Sega leaning into its retro legacy with a wink. For fans, it was seen as just an adorable tribute. Famicom Classic Mini. In 2016, Nintendo tapped into nostalgia gold with the release of the Famicom Classic Mini in Japan, the counterpart to the NES Classic Edition in the West. Styled exactly like the original 1983 Famicom, this shrunken version came preloaded with 30 games, including Japanese exclusive titles that never appeared on the NES Classic. The console connected to modern TVs via HDMI and included hardwired controllers that were scaled-down replicas of the originals, a detail that added authenticity but also meant they were uncomfortably small for extended play. The menu featured charming 8-bit music and game box art, and each title came with save states, letting players pause and resume whenever they wanted. It was a runaway hit, selling out almost instantly and sparking a wave of scalpers charging well above retail. Unlike the original Famicom, there was no cartridge slot. All games were locked in. For collectors and retro fans, it became an instant must-have, blending modern convenience with old-school charm. While the NES Classic got more global attention, the Famicom Classic Mini remains one of the most beloved Japan-exclusive mini consoles ever released. PlayStation Classic. In 2018, Sony joined the retro mini craze with the PlayStation Classic, a shrunken replica of the original 1994 PlayStation. It came preloaded with 20 games, including hits like Final Fantasy VII and Tekken 3. It should have been an instant nostalgia win, but the launch quickly turned into one of Sony's most criticized hardware releases. Fans were baffled by the game selection, which left out several defining PlayStation titles like Crash Bandicoot and Gran Turismo. Even worse, many included games were the slower PAL versions instead of the smoother NTSC versions, leading to choppier performance. The hardware itself looked great. The buttons, memory card slots, and design perfectly matched the original, but the controllers lacked analog sticks, making certain games feel off. At $99, the value felt thin compared to Nintendo's mini consoles, and sales plummeted after launch. Within months, retailers slashed prices by more than half just to clear shelves. It showed that nostalgia alone can't carry a product. The PlayStation Classic had the look, but not the lineup to back it up. Atari Flashback 3. Released in 2011, the Atari Flashback 3 was part of a long-running series of plug-and-play consoles meant to recreate the feel of the Atari 2600 era. Shaped like a miniaturized version of the classic wood-grain 2600, it came preloaded with 60 built-in games, including staples like Adventure, Asteroids, and Centipede. Unlike the Flashback 2, which used a 2600 on a chip hardware recreation, the Flashback 3 relied entirely on emulation. This made it more affordable to produce, but it also meant the experience wasn't perfectly identical to original hardware. Some players noticed minor input lag and sound differences, while the included joystick replicas felt stiffer and less responsive than the originals. Still, the HDMI era hadn't fully arrived, so the Flashback 3 used the composite video output, keeping it compatible with older TVs. It also dropped any cartridge support. You were limited to the games built in. Despite these drawbacks, it served as an accessible entry point for casual players who just wanted a quick nostalgia hit without digging up vintage gear. For collectors, it marked a turning point in the Flashback line, cementing AtGame's role in keeping Atari's legacy alive for years to come. Do you remember any of these? Leave a comment below which one you forgot about. TurboGrafx 16 Mini. When Konami announced the TurboGrafx 16 Mini in 2019, retro fans were shocked. The original system, released in North America in 1989, was a cult favorite but never a mainstream hit. The mini version launched in 2020 and came preloaded with an impressive 57 games, split between the North American TurboGrafx 16 library and the Japanese PC Engine lineup. This meant players could experience classics like Bonk's Adventure, R-Type, and Splatterhouse, along with Japan-only gems such as Snatcher and Dracula X. The emulation quality was praised, with crisp HDMI output and faithful audio reproduction. The console's shell perfectly replicated the original's chunky, rectangular design, and the controller felt authentic, complete with turbo switches for rapid fire. However, the release timing was unfortunate. It launched during the early stages of the global pandemic, and supply chain issues meant stock was limited, especially in North America. Scalpers quickly drove up prices, making it hard for casual fans to get one at retail. For those lucky enough to own it, the TurboGrafx 16 Mini became one of the most content-rich retro mini consoles ever made, proving that even niche systems can shine when given the proper tribute. Neo Geo Mini. In 2018, SNK celebrated its 40th anniversary by releasing the Neo Geo Mini, a retro throwback unlike most other mini consoles. Instead of just being a small box that plugged into your TV, this was a fully functional mini arcade cabinet with its own built-in 3.5-inch LCD screen. It came preloaded with 40 classic SNK titles, including Metal Slug, King of Fighters, and Samurai Showdown. Players could use the tiny built-in joystick and buttons right on the unit, or connect it to a TV via HDMI and plug in external controllers for a more traditional experience. While the concept was unique and the game library solid, the execution was polarizing. The small joystick wasn't ideal for precision play, and the screen size made long sessions tiring. Some also criticized the color choices for the international version, preferring the Japan-exclusive white and red model. Still, it stood out for doing something different in the retro mini market, delivering both portable and home play options in one package. For SNK fans, it was a compact tribute to one of gaming's most iconic arcade brands, even if it worked better as a collectible than a primary way to play. Neo Geo Arcade Stick Pro. Released in late 2019, the Neo Geo Arcade Stick Pro blurred the line between controller and console. At first glance, it looked like a high-quality fight stick modeled after SNK's classic arcade cabinets, complete with responsive microswitch buttons and an 8-direction joystick. But inside the shell was a full plug-and-play console loaded with 20 classic Neo Geo fighting games, including Fatal Fury Special, King of Fighters 98, and Samurai Showdown 2. It could connect directly to a TV via HDMI, letting you play without any additional hardware, or be used purely as an arcade stick for other systems and the Neo Geo Mini. The concept was ambitious, combining premium arcade controls with an all-in-one retro console, but it wasn't without drawbacks. The built-in game library was entirely focused on fighters, leaving out other beloved Neo Geo genres, like shooters and sports titles. There was also no official way to add more games. Still, as a piece of hardware, it was praised for its sturdy build and authentic feel, making it a standout for fighting game fans. The Arcade Stick Pro proved that the retro mini market still had room for unconventional ideas. Sega Astro City Mini V. In 2022, Sega released the Astro City Mini V, a follow-up to the original Astro City Mini, but with one major twist. The V stood for vertical. This mini arcade cabinet was designed specifically for classic shoot-'em-ups and other vertically oriented arcade games, featuring a 4.6-inch vertical LCD screen to replicate the authentic Tate setup used in arcades. It came preloaded with 23 games, including hardcore favorites like Strikers 1945, Gunbird, and Raiden. The unit included a responsive joystick and arcade-style buttons for direct play on the cabinet, but it could also output to a TV via HDMI and support external controllers for a bigger screen experience. For genre purists, the Astro City Mini V was a dream, offering an official, compact way to play some of the most celebrated shooters ever made. But with a high import cost and a very niche focus, it wasn't for everyone. Casual gamers might have found the vertical format awkward for anything outside of shooters. Still, for arcade collectors and enthusiasts, it stood out as one of Sega's boldest and most specialized mini consoles to date. Taito Egret 2 Mini. Released in 2022, the Taito Egret 2 Mini was a loving tribute to the company's iconic 1996 arcade cabinet, famous for its clean design and rotating screen. Like the original, the mini version included a unique party trick, a 5-inch LCD display that could physically rotate between horizontal and vertical orientations, letting players enjoy games exactly as they were intended. Preloaded with 40 titles spanning the late 70s through the 90s, it offered classics like Bubble Bobble and Space Invaders. The unit came with built-in controls, but Taito also sold optional accessories like a trackball and paddle controller for games such as Arkanoid. HDMI output and USB controller support meant it could also be enjoyed on a bigger screen. The attention to detail impressed collectors, but the high price and Japan-focused release limited its mainstream reach. Still, for retro enthusiasts, the Egret 2 Mini was more than just another mini console. It was a functional piece of arcade history shrunk down for your desk. Its rotating screen set it apart from competitors, making it one of the most versatile and display-accurate minis on the market. A500 Mini. Released in 2022 by Retro Games Ltd., the A500 Mini was a modern tribute to the Commodore Amiga 500, one of the most beloved home computers of the late 80s and early 90s. While not a one-to-one gaming console in its original form, the Amiga 500 was famous for its library of advanced games and creative software, and the Mini version aimed to capture that legacy in plug-and-play form. Preloaded with 25 licensed titles, including Another World, Worms: The Director's Cut, and the Chaos Engine, the A500 Mini also supported WHD load, letting players add their own legally obtained Amiga game files via USB. The system featured a scaled-down case design, HDMI output for modern TVs, and a replica 2-button mouse alongside a newly designed gamepad. Emulation quality was praised, and the inclusion of save states made classic titles more accessible to modern players. While it didn't have the mainstream name recognition of Nintendo or Sega's mini consoles, the A500 Mini earned respect among retro computing fans for its authenticity and flexibility. It wasn't just a nostalgia piece, it was one of the few minis that truly bridged the gap between console and computer history. Thanks for watching, subscribe for more.